Wayne. The first thing to point out, ladies and gentlemen, is we've not scripted this. We had a WhatsApp message exchange the other day. We had a 2-minute conversation this afternoon, and we decided definitely not to script it. We wanted to do it kind of off the cuff, because I think we'd probably get a better outcome from that, from both of us, really. We started off really, we're going to go through this. There's about 10 images, I think, which are going to prompt us through Wayne's career. But I put this one up first of all because I've had the privilege of photographing all of Wayne's hundreds for Derbyshire. And it's quite remarkable. He scored 46. And this very morning, I just took a quick look at Cricket Archive, and Adam Lyth, Alex Lees, James Vince, Zach Crawley, Keaton Jennings, Ben Duckett, Ben Stokes have all played for England. And none of them have scored as many first-class hundreds or as many career hundreds as Wayne has. And I'm sure at some point we might come to ask the question about why he was never, or why he was overlooked, shall we say, for at least a go in the England team. I think most of us probably think that there was a point in his career where certainly that would have been a great opportunity. Anyway, the first picture we're going to look at. Wayne came to England after playing 23 first-class games in South Africa. John Morris was the head coach, and John had a very, very good record on recruitment. He brought not just Wayne, but people like Tim Grunewald and Tony Palladino, Wes Durston, Chesney Hughes, Mark Foote. These all came to Derbyshire under John's watch. The obvious question, Wayne, is how do you, we know you came to Derbyshire, you played 3 second 11 red ball games, and then before you knew it, you were thrown into your debut. But before we come to that, what was the process that got you from South Africa to Derbyshire?
Sure. How long have we got, Griff?
All night.
No, I think, as you said, I think John made some really good acquisitions and signings over his time, and I was just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, and I got in touch with John. So well, to go back a little bit, obviously my career started in South Africa, hockey and cricket, and then I wanted to give cricket a go after my hockey, and was playing in South Africa for 6 months, and then I played club cricket up in Lancashire for 6 months, and did that for a couple of years, and then my Dolphins career sort of ended in South Africa, and I came over, and I'd been doing pretty well up in the Central Lancashire League. I'd scored quite a lot of runs, and through Clive Rice I managed to get in touch with John. And then through Luke Sutton, I actually got in touch with Crick. So I kind of went in with a bit of a 2-prong attack to try and get a trial at Derbyshire. And John contacted me and he said, we'd love to have you come down. And I still clearly remember driving into Derby, getting lost somewhere in the middle of Derby, trying to find the ground, and eventually parking in here, walking out when the square was the other way around. And had a net facing Charles Langeveld, Ian Hunter, Greg Smith, pretty much the first team bowlers, and I had a 15-minute net. And John said to me after that, I probably left 90% of those balls, I reckon. They were bowling in a really good area. Charles Langeveld, he was a fantastic bowler with the juke ball, was swinging it all over the place. And I think John just saw that I had the probably the mental application to bat for a long period of time. Is actually what he said to me a few years ago, and he said to me then, he said, we don't have any opportunities now, but this was towards the back end of 2008, and Carla and I actually were getting married back in South Africa at the end of that year in December, and then we were coming back out in January, and John said to me, get in touch in March and we'll have a go at some second team games for you, and we'll see where things take us. And that's essentially what happened. And another story, I was in the March. My cousin had come to visit us up in Manchester, and I took him to Old Trafford football, and I said, oh well, why don't we just go down to the cricket ground? And Derbyshire happened to be playing a warm-up game against Lancashire at Old Trafford, and unbeknown to us, we walked in there, and as I parked up, there was a lot of construction happening, but I parked up by the indoor school at Old Trafford, and I looked across, and I could see John walking across with Gary Park towards the net. So I stood on the side of the field, waited for him, and we have a conversation. He said, "You haven't given me a call yet. We've got a game in 2 weeks. I want you playing that game." So I said, "Great." And then 2 weeks later, I was playing my first second team game.
Splendid. So we moved from there to July down to Cheltenham. The picture on the left is you walking out for the first time as a Derbyshire cricketer, and you're opening the batting with, of course, Chris Rogers, a very well-known cricketer in these parts, an Australian Test cricketer. What was your feeling at that time, becoming a county cricketer in England? But also, what was it like batting with someone like Buck Rogers, who was a senior player within the county?
Yeah, I was super nervous, really, really nervous. Not just to go out to bat, and I'd obviously waited so long for the opportunity, but going out there with Buck, who was obviously an international cricketer and a captain, and him not knowing, he hadn't even seen me have a net. So he'd never seen me bat before. So we're walking out, and obviously you want to get things right from a communication point of view. Australians are a bit different. They don't like a glove tap. There's a few things that... So I walked up to him in the first over, actually, and I gave it one of these, and he gave me a little tap on the side and said, "No, don't do that, mate." So I was nervous, and it was pretty intense, and I didn't actually have a decent knock in the first innings. And I remember Kyla actually, we'd driven down together the night before, and she was going back at the end of the day, and I mean we've spoken about it quite a lot, how it was. We were waiting for that opportunity, and for it to end like that after the first innings was just sort of gut wrenching for us. But yeah, there were a lot of nerves in that first innings, and it probably settled through the game. And also, I knew a lot of the guys that I was playing with as well, from playing with them in South Africa to playing a few second team games with some of the guys, so I was made to feel pretty welcome. The only one I didn't really know was probably Buck, and the rest of the guys I knew pretty well. So the more the game went on, the more I felt sort of at peace with being there and confident enough to go and get some runs.
Well, we saw that with a vengeance, because as you come off the field there, 25 years of age, not a grey fleck in the hair. And Wayne, of course, scored 170 on his debut, which remains the highest individual score by any Derbyshire cricketer on debut. What was it like at that point when you come off the field? Because obviously you've come to England with whether it's with a plan, an accidental or an incidental plan. You've scored a century on your debut. It must have been a remarkable feeling.
It was actually. It was a funny moment, because there's Pipey behind in the background, and Pipey came in and literally blocked an over before we declared. So that's something that sort of we laugh and joke about quite a lot, because he obviously Pipey played with him, and he was our physio for a long time. We have a lot of laughs together, but that is one. He wasn't happy with coming out for an over, block it, and then declare. But coming off the field there, I mean, the sense of sort of pride, elation that I felt. I failed to mention, coming into the game, I had a little hamstring niggle as well. I played a game the day before this game started. I was playing for Unsworth up at, funny enough, against Darren Smith. Smitty was playing for Littleborough, and I was playing for Unsworth, and we played against each other. And during my batting innings in that game, running between the wicket, I twinged my hamstring. But I wasn't going to miss out on this opportunity, and we played football in warm-ups just before the first day, and I kind of held my hamstring as if I'd just done something there, and then managed to get the physio to strap me up to get me through the game.
To prove it was no fluke, you went on during the course of that season to score. Clearly you showed the way, because you had this appetite for big hundreds. You got 100, big 100 down at Whitgift. So the season came to an end, you were opening the batting, and I think it's probably fair to say you were described, in fact John said we were looking for a player of that calibre to bat in that style, and there was a sense, I don't mean this as a criticism, but you were quite an obdurate, stubborn kind of opening batsman, which is quite contrary to what we see today. But presumably you were comfortable opening the batting. I'm just going to move on when Tom gives me the go-ahead to look at the 2010 season, because you continued to open the batting during that summer and had a pretty good year that year. And the image you're going to see in a moment is of you at Queen's Park, Chesterfield, where in 2010 Wayne became the first and only Derbyshire cricketer to score 2 centuries in a match at that ground. It was against Surrey, and there we are, looking quite tanned actually there. Wayne, you've been to Tantastic for the looks of it.
It's always warm and sunny up in Chester.
Indeed. So presumably you'd played northern grounds in the leagues, but Chesterfield quite different in terms of the surface to Derby and to a lot of the headquarters grounds. Were there different challenges for you as an opening batsman during that 2010 season when you were actually now a fully fledged county cricketer?
Yeah, I think actually, thinking back to Chesterfield when we first started playing on it, well, when I first started playing on it, it actually had quite a little bit of pace, or quite a bit of pace down the hill, which it doesn't necessarily have as much now. And I was used to quicker wickets growing up in South Africa, so I would say that helped. Up the hill, I remember Tim Lindley in the first innings. He was seaming it all over the place, and then he went down injured, probably halfway through the first innings. But he had sort of knocked over our top order, the rest of our top order in that first innings. So it was almost 2 different ends. There was pace down the hill, and there was a bit of nip up the hill. But I think that definitely playing in the leagues up in Lancashire, I was used to that. I got used to that movement, and then the pace down the hill. I'd grown up pretty much on quick wickets. But one of the things I remember going into these games not having scored too many runs before this game, before these innings, sorry. And I went for a simple game plan. I wasn't going to hit the ball through the covers, so it was straight back down the ground, off my legs. I backed my cuts, obviously, but I didn't want to drive the ball through the covers. I got out caught behind, and one of the things that Chris Rogers always spoke to me about, when you start getting out in a way, you never get out that way again. So if you get hit on the pads, next time you make sure you use your bat, even if you nick it. Don't get out the same way twice. And I got out caught behind a couple of times, so I wanted to put the cover drive away. And I went for more punches down the ground, work off the legs and cuts, and that was something that sort of stood out for me in those innings. I think against the spin, I did a lot of sweeping, which obviously has always been part of my game. But again, I remember even reverse sweeping quite a bit in that game. I think I got out to reverse sweeping.
I was going to ask you if you could remember how you got to it. You were bowled. I think Batty bowled you.
I think Batty bowled me from a reverse sweep, and I came off. I think I got more stick from Kyler than I did from the rest of the team.
We moved through 2010, 2011, and we get to 2011. I don't know if you can remember that 7 different players opened the batting that summer, and clearly you were. There was a plan afoot. John had departed, Carl Cricken had come in as the head coach. So were you looking to move away from opening? I mean, we'd obviously got Guptill had arrived, people like Paul Borrington, Matt Lineker were being given a go, Durston opened the batting, Gary Park opened. Were you looking to move down the order? Was that a conscious move?
No, it wasn't at that stage. I was batting down the order in white ball cricket. But it definitely wasn't a conscious move. I think I got left out towards the end. I went through a horrid run. I think I scored 5 noughts in a row, combined first team and second team. So I'd gone through a bit of a bad patch, and then Matt Lineker had come in for me. I can't remember who I came in for. Someone got injured. Might have even been Chesney batting at 3, got injured, and I came in for the last couple of games batting at 3, and I did okay batting at 3. And also with Guppy and Uzi. Guppy was an opener, Uzi was a number 3 at that point. He's obviously turned into a fantastic test opener, but he preferred to bat 3. So I opened the next season. I ended up opening when Uzi played, and when Guppy played, I batted 3. So that's kind of where it started, but it wasn't anything conscious from me necessarily. It was more just how things worked out with the nature of our overseas players, and thankfully it worked out pretty well, and I've been able to slide one more place to 4.
Yeah. We came into the 2012 season, of course, at that point, at the end of 2011, Luke Sutton was still the captain. We weren't to know that Luke would be retiring from the game. Did you always see yourself as a candidate for, I know you're not going to be big-headed about this, but did you see yourself as someone who could be a captain from a strategic perspective, a leadership perspective?
Yeah, I'd captained teams before in South Africa, and I'd captained hockey teams before. So I did see myself as having potential to captain the team. I didn't think it would happen that quickly. If I had it, well, I wouldn't change things because of the year that we had that year. I probably saw myself doing it in 2 or 3 years' time. A little bit more experience, especially on the back of the season that I'd had in 2011, where I'd been left out of the team for a couple of games in Red Bull cricket. So on the back of that season, it felt like it wasn't the right time, but it turned out to be the right time.
Well, 2012, of course, we played the first 7 games of the season, won 4, drew 3, and by the time we came to the break, we were 40 points clear at the top and never relinquished that spot. Help me, Tom. There we go. But it wasn't a game that we won that I think sticks out for me, although there were some really, really good victories during the course of the season. This is the game down at Northampton where we were in an absolute mess, quite frankly, and to lose this game would probably have ruined our chances of promotion. You, of course, scored 231. You batted for 400 minutes, I think, and faced about as many balls. What's it like? Can you kind of explain when the opposition makes a big score and you're 150 for 7, which is what we were, and you're out there with your wicketkeeper and somehow you've got to try and keep you in the game? How did that all pan out, that game?
For me, it probably started a little earlier. The back end of their innings, I dived to field the ball and I landed on the ball. I thought I'd broken my rib, so I actually went off for an X-ray, and that was why I didn't bat at the top of the order that game. I actually slid down and ended up batting at 5. Thankfully, there was no break. Well, it was pretty uncomfortable, so I slid down, and then I think we lost a couple of fairly quick wickets. So I had to go in earlier than I was hoping for. I was hoping I'd be batting the next day. But then I think the first thing was for us to try and avoid the follow-on. That was when I was out there with batting with the guys in the lower order and with TB. I think it was the first thing we wanted to try and achieve was just avoid the follow-on, because we were in such a good position in terms of the league table. We knew it was a really, really important game for us, that we if we could win it, fantastic, but certainly we didn't want to be losing points and losing this game. So I think it was more of a case of just batting, and TP played with a freedom and with an aggression to like he always did, actually. And I think between the two of us, we just fed off the confidence of the partnership, and it just kept building and building, and almost felt like it was going to continue for another day and a half. It was only for a ball literally rolling and hitting the base of the stumps that ended it. But I mean, he was a fantastic partner to have in that on that day and on a couple of days there. And what it did for our season, that it showed the fight that we pretty much showed all the way through. And that game, as you rightfully say, Griff, I look back, and the wins that we had through the first half of the season really set things up. But that was a massive game for us. Being able to save the game and essentially nearly win it. We weren't able to bowl them out on the last day, but get ourselves into a position where we could try and force a result, but also get the bonus points that we required to just stay ahead going into the last few games was really important.
Wayne and Tom put 261 on for the 9th wicket, just to prove it's not us that's always on the receiving end of these horrible partnerships down the order. And of course, that great day on the... I'm doing it, Tom, I'm doing it. There we go. There we are, that's the 14th of September 2014, about 2,500–3,000 people here. The great thing was that the First Division title had been sorted a week early, so therefore the only competition up for grabs as far as Sky were concerned was the Second Division, so we had Sky cameras here on that day. We won the title, of course, the night before, because after the third day results were such that we were promoted, but we still had to beat Hampshire to win the title. I'm assuming this must be your proudest moment. What was it like in the dressing room at that, when Ross Whiteley and Kawaja were out there and there was that sense of expectation?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is my proudest moment at the club, lifting a trophy. And as you're saying, the year that we had, from the start of the year and the way we started on fire with all the wins, and then to sort of culminate in that win against a really good Hampshire team. Actually, Hampshire were a pretty good outfit, and it was a tight game. I actually remember Roscoe getting a couple of important wickets as well.
That's right, yeah.
Which sort of set up for the last day chase, and then we lost a few early-ish wickets, which made things a little shaky. But Ross with a couple of lusty bows and Uzi to see us home, like he had done so often through the season. To his knock at Yorkshire, the 100 he scored at Yorkshire was superb as well. But the atmosphere and it wasn't just in the dressing room. It was that whole the electric vibe on top here around the ground. It was just really incredible, and get goosebumps sort of talking about it and thinking back to that moment, because for the club it was such a proud day, and I think for us as a team, there was no expectation on us that year. Going into it, I think the bookies probably had us finishing bottom, and we turned that around and finished top. And the unity in the group, what Crick did for us as a team to bring us all together, it was pretty special to be a part of that team. And we actually had a reunion a couple of years ago. Almost all of the team were around, or everyone who could be. Some guys might have been abroad, but the guys are all here, and we still stay in touch regularly. That whole group, which is pretty special.
Yeah, there was a good blend, because you've got players that had come through the academy, like Borrington, like Whiteley, like Dan Redfern, lovely cricketer, lovely batsman. But you'd also got two really good overseas players who were early in their careers, weren't they, young and hungry. How impressive were Martin Guptill and Usman Khawaja? Yeah,
I mean, they were. Obviously, they both shared the previous season, so we had seen them before. I still remember the tone was set in the first over of that season. Chaminda Vas was running in from the far side, bowling at Martin Guptill. Chaminda must have had five jumpers on, 5 layers on. It was so cold for him, and he was running in, and he bowled a couple of balls down at Guppy, and Guppy really liked the look of it. I think probably the 3rd or 4th ball, he hit him onto the top of the marquee. He swung one onto his pads, and he just picked him up, and he hit him onto the top of the marquee. I still remember the roar in the dressing room from that, because at the start, this is the first over of a championship season. There's the expectation. The crowd's a bit nervous. There's the nervous energy in the change room, and to stand up and to pick up a ball and put it on the marquee in the first over, that set the tone for the season for us. So Guppy and obviously continued to play well. Uzi, as I mentioned already, some of the knocks that he played for us were sensational in terms of what to achieve what we did. That knock at Yorkshire and certainly the way he saw us home in that last game were two sort of standouts for me.
You got promotion, and clearly we see year on year, don't we, teams that go up, unless they are, if you like, one of the recognised big counties, it can be quite a challenge to stay up there. We'll just look at this this image from Queen's Park. We'll come to this in a moment. But what were the challenges? Obviously, during that winter, we recruited Billy Godalman, we recruited Shivnarine Chanderpaul as the overseas cricketer. Did you? I guess you'd go in positive, but you must have sensed that the bowling attacks, particularly in Division 1, might be more testing than the ones you came up against in Div 2.
Naturally you're going to expect that. You're going up a division. The cricket's going to be tougher and harder. We went in. I was having a look to see if we could see the pitch there, but obviously that's at Chesterfield. The wickets that we played on here, and we went in with a specific game plan. We wanted to play on green wickets, and they were literally like the outfield in that season. Still remember some games where I think it was there were two. One game against Somerset and another game against Sussex, where balls weren't just nipping, but they were taking off and nearly taking your face off a good length, because those were the type of wickets we wanted to play on, with decent pace and nipping around to give our bowlers. We wanted to challenge ourselves as batters, but we wanted to give ourselves the best chance of bowling teams out in Div 1, and we wanted to give our bowlers a good opportunity to do that. It just happened to work out in those first few games. We came up against a couple of really good bowling attacks who did the opposite to us and knocked us over quite cheaply. And it was a tough start to the season. We had quite a few losses early doors, but once we started to grow into it, at the back end, we mixed the team up a little bit, threw some younger guys in. We really gave it a go with the back end, and almost up until the last game, we gave ourselves a chance. There were a couple of games. I still remember the game at Surrey, obviously at the Oval against Surrey, and if it wasn't for Hashim Amla's knock, we would have beaten them, and probably that would have kept us up. So we were really close. The start of the season didn't quite go to plan, and if I recall correctly, it was almost snow on the. Where did we start at Edgbaston that year?
There was snow piled up by the. So you walked out to open with Billy.
Yes.
And there was snow piled up probably this high at the side of the side.
It's probably felt as cold as it does at the moment when we started that season.
I've put this picture up because I know that you probably can identify all of these, Wayne. The Christopher Martin Jenkins Spirit of Cricket Award was introduced after the death of the famous journalist and broadcaster. And at Queen's Park in 2013 against Yorkshire, very good attack, international attack with Sidebottom, Bresnan and Adil Rashid. And in the first innings, Wayne nicked off, and umpire Jeff Evans afterwards said he wouldn't have given you out. But Wayne walked, and having walked, he became the first recipient of the Christopher Martin Jenkins Spirit of Cricket Award. In the second innings, played what I still think, and Tony Palladino and I often have discourse about this one. I think this was your best 100. I don't know which you think was your best. 141, and it was almost as if you were. There was no one else in the side that looked capable of dealing with the attack that day. What do you remember about the first innings and that walking? And it's for us who've known South Africans at Derbyshire, it's very unusual that they walk. But secondly, what was it like that second innings? Was it as tough as it looked? Because that's why I've always considered it to be your best, because it was against a really, really tough attack.
Yeah, the walking bit to start, I think. It wasn't really appreciated by the dressing room when I got back as well, because I think we were 20 odd for 4 with me walking off. But for me, that's something that I've always done. It was. I still remember my parents and family telling me, this is an honesty game, and if you nick the ball, you walk, and that's how cricket was always played. And obviously things have changed over the years, but I still believe that I will get my rewards, even if I get a couple of bad decisions that go against me. But if I'm honest with myself, then the game will stay honest to me. So I think it was just something. The ball flicked my glove and went through to the keeper. I don't even remember much of appeal other than from the keeper. I don't think Paddo even appealed for it. But I heard the appeal from behind. I can't remember who the keeper was. It Hoggy? Hoddy, the keeper. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So he appealed, and it clearly flicked my glove. So I walked and got back. I don't think Crick was too happy with me as well, because he would have seen that that Jeff Evans was already sort of shaking his head not to get me out.
Who was next man in? Was it Wes?
Yeah.
Or was Wes already?
No, he was out already. It's betting at
Redders or Ross Whiteley, perhaps.
Ross, or maybe even we've been 4 down. Yeah, I think Redders might have been Redders actually. It obviously it was a moment that has been marked by the award, but I would have done it anyway, no matter what the situation, whether it had been playing on a Sunday afternoon or a game at Chesterfield, I still would have done that. And then the second innings. Yeah, Griff, I would say it's up there. There's for a few reasons. There's probably a few hundreds for me that are.
We might come on to one in a moment. I think the next slide.
Yeah, are pretty memorable and special. But that one, I think it had everything for me. I played the seamers really well. They were getting the ball to reverse. The wicket was obviously deteriorating. Rashid was bowling. It was spinning quite big. So there was a lot. So as a batter, I had a lot of challenges in that innings, and I felt like, as you mentioned, I felt like I overcame them really well. And Chesterfield's a fantastic play. If you can get the ball through the inner ring there, it's 4. And for me, I think I probably did find a lot of boundaries. They also had attacking fields at that point, because they were obviously out to win, to try and bowl us out, which gave me an opportunity to score fairly freely. But I felt it was one of the innings where I was in a lot of control against both the seam and the spin, which you don't often get. Some days I feel like the seamers are troubling me and spin's easy, or vice versa, the other way around. That was a day where I felt just in control in general throughout that innings.
The innings I was going to mention that I didn't want you to mention. This is the one that Tony Palladino always said was the best. This is 100 you scored in 2014 at Worcester, and you're playing a shot there off Syed Ajmal, who was the mystery Pakistani spinner. And a question I want to ask you is when I first started, and as many people in this room first started watching county cricket, we saw overseas players who were in the game year after year after year after year, and I guess it was possible for players to become familiar with them. In the modern game, with players coming in just fleetingly, I presume it's quite often you come up, even though you're a fairly cosmopolitan cricketer, you must come up against players from time to time that you've rarely seen. But you've got to get into the game as quickly as you can. Was Ajmal one of those bowlers?
He was. Obviously, he was someone who we had seen a lot on TV, and his mystery was just that. He was able to bowl the dusra, which was the ball that went the other way. And as an off spinner, to have that skill and not change too much in your action, it makes it pretty tough as a batter. I remember the week before, I think they played Hampshire, and I rung up Dale Benkenstein, and I spoke to Dale Benkenstein, and I said to Banks, how would you play him? What did you guys try and do against him? And his one thing was just try and play him off the back foot. So that was, for me, I didn't necessarily do that all the time, but my mindset was play him off the back foot as much as I could. It was obviously the wicket that made it dry, it spun, it was conditions which were really favourable for him. The other thing I had in my favour is I do tend to pick spinners pretty well. I watch the hand pretty closely, and I can generally pick what a spinner's going to do. And through that game, I was able to pick him. I could pick his dusra, his normal off his dusra, and his cricket ball I was able to pick, which gave me a bit of an advantage. And then I obviously sweep well as well, and he didn't like me sweeping, because as soon as I swept, he pulled his length back, and I was able to play him off the back foot the wicket wasn't. It spun, but it wasn't quick. So as soon as he was a bit short, it made it easier for me.
It makes it sound so easy. Doesn't it? You just move back, just stuff. Yeah, if only.
But it was up again.
That's one
right
of
up there with one of the best.
Tony always said it was the best because you scored more than half the runs in the innings, and I think because you were so obviously to the naked eye were picking someone that no one else seemed to be able to pick. I think that was why he considered it so good. You were still captain at this time, but obviously over the course of the next 12 months. You gave the captaincy up. It was announced at an annual general meeting. It was all very convivial. I know the reasoning behind it. Did you feel that you said you'd have rather probably come to it later, but did you still feel that you'd done long enough at that point? Presumably, you must have done.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, yes, I felt pretty drained and that's what I think. For having done it over the 3 and a bit seasons, because I think I probably did for the first 6 weeks of the next season when Billy broke his finger anyway. I felt pretty drained at the end of it, and I felt like I needed a change, and I wanted to go back to just focusing on the batting. One thing, thankfully for me over the time was that I hadn't let the captaincy affect my batting. In fact, if anything, my batting had got better during the time that I was captain. It probably, we'd had a couple of okay, not great seasons, and it was time for a change. I felt that, and in discussions with Pop, he also felt that we needed to sort of change things up, and I did feel the release in the next year, and I think I had probably one of my better seasons in terms of runs in 2016 from just being able to go out and bat and enjoy myself.
Yeah, we're going to look at 2016 in a second and also look at what you did in the winter in 2016. But this is the 2016 season. Wayne obviously takes centre stage there. And this for me just puts Wayne's position within the club's elite cricketers, I think, into perspective, because these are the players that have scored 6 first class, that's red ball hundreds in a season, or more for Derbyshire, and there are just 10 of them. When you look at John Wright, Barnett, Azharuddin, Morris, Les Townsend, Chris Adams, Buck Rogers, Peter Kirster, Peter Bowler, we're talking real top draw company here. How does it feel, Wayne? I know, we are mere mortals. I can barely hold a cricket bat, never mind do anything with it. But what is it like when because by this point you've been at the club for 8 seasons and you've just scored 6 centuries and you are up there with these kind of players. How does that feel? Do you look at those numbers? I mean, it's a stats game. You must look at the numbers, presumably. We do look at the numbers, and for me, it is one of the drivers is trying to score 1,000 runs, as many hundreds as you can. How does it feel? I think for me, another thing, to be able to score 3 figures, when you score 3 figures, the feeling that I get, I get, again, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it, but being able to go to 100, that emotion that it brings to get the 3 figures, that what you know how hard you've worked, not just on that day, but for the last however many years it's been, as a young cricketer trying to achieve that. Every time I get to the 100, I have that feeling that I don't want to give away. It's such a special feeling. So to do it as many times through that year was, as I was saying earlier, that giving the captaincy up gave me a little bit of freedom to go out and enjoy the batting again, and my face probably says it. That's how it feels. It was when any time you score 100, it really is for me up there with the best feelings, and I want to continue to do it for as long as possible. Now, you've become England qualified by this point, and I pointed out at the start about your 4600s. Was there a sense, and I'll just go back just 3 years to 2013, when Wayne was the first player in the country to reach 1,000 runs, and all of them were scored in the first division. So this oft-quoted phrase, well, they score runs in the second division. which kind of rules them out of playing Test cricket, didn't apply then. Did you ever feel around that time that, and this is a tricky question I know for somebody, but you must have, because most of us all thought, probably the same with Mark Foote, that had you played for another county, for example, you might have been given a gig. Did you ever harbour hopes of playing for England?
Obviously, yeah, I harboured hopes. And I think, had I been qualified 2013, 14, I think I would have had a sniff at it, just on the makeup of the England team at that time, and they were sort of looking for a number. I think Trotz was sort of in and out of, in terms of finishing. The timing then would have been about right, but I only qualified at the beginning of 2015. Yeah. And then again after this season, I thought I had a chance, but it wasn't meant to be.
But what you did do in the winter of 2016, I only know this from conversations we've had before, was you decided to target the shorter form of the game, not to the detriment of red ball cricket, but perhaps you could give a little bit of insight in what it was that you did that winter to become, as we now know, unarguably Derbyshire's finest T20 cricketer.
Well, Griffin, I think you actually hit the nail on the head in terms of the type of cricketer I was when I arrived at the club. I was your opening batter who would bat for a long period of time, and that's how I was seen in South Africa. I was never really given an opportunity in white ball cricket. But I realised that to be able to have a sustainable career, you got to make it in all formats, and certainly white ball cricket. That winter, John Sadler and I, in the 20, it was just
16 into 17.
16 into 17 Sads. No, so the one before, yeah, well, both, yeah. I mean, the one before, I think I worked on short ball and improving the short ball, and that winter was range hitting and trying to clear the boundaries, because I felt like I never had the confidence to do that, and it's such a big thing to be able to just stand and have the confidence to hit the ball out the ground, but that confidence can only come from doing it out there, and then the hard work in the winter. I literally spent the 6 months trying to hit sixes, and to be able to do it standing in the crease was my goal. So I could always run down at the spinners and hit them back over their head, but I needed that. I felt like I needed that momentum. I didn't, but I felt like that was the case. So it was building the confidence up in that winter. And
so this wasn't physical in terms of bull. This was about timing, technique.
It probably had a bit of everything. There was the physical side comes with it, and working with the strength and conditioning coaches on the power of the leg drive in particular, to be able to get that strength. But one thing that I've always done well is I'm really wristy because of naturally the hockey hands that I've got. I was trying to get that timing right, that I could just hit spinners from the crease, hit seamers back over their heads, because I didn't have the confidence to hit seamers back over their heads as well. I felt like with the seamers, I would more often use the pace, which I still do, but that winter worked on it, and then the next year was a massive change for me in terms of what I was able to do in white ball.
Well, of course, 2017 was the year we went to the quarterfinals of the T20. You, of course, opened the bowl in many of those games. I love this shot. I took this at the Radcliffe Road end at Trent Bridge. It's become kind of trademark Madsen shot, hasn't it? The ramp. You play it a lot. Is it? I guess some of it's predetermined, but I understand because of the way, I'm no tactician, but the way they move the field around, you kind of have some idea of what's coming. How did you work on the ramp shot? Was that another one indoors?
No. The ramp just came about naturally, and actually, it came. The first time I played it was actually in a red ball game. You might remember this. I played it against Matt Coles at Canterbury. I hit him for 6 over like a fine third man, and it wasn't a short ball. It was actually probably just above waist height, and I got down and I hit him hit him over third man, and
Did he say anything to you?
he would have said a lot to me. But I think that was the first time I'd played it, and then it just became an instinctual thing. And after that, I spent a little bit of time practicing it, but it's more, again, it's an instinct thing. It's just knowing where it's pitching, where it's going to come, giving myself a bit of room, and it's pretty it's sort of counterintuitive in terms of what you're trying to achieve as a batter, because you're trying to get your head to the ball, and certainly when someone bowls a short ball, you're wanting to, in white ball cricket, you're wanting to go at the ball and smack it out the ground over square leg or over mid wicket, even fine leg. So to develop that, and what it did for my game, that shot as well, what that shot did for my game, it literally changed everything in terms of me as a batter, because suddenly bowlers felt they couldn't bowl short because they didn't want to put a fielder behind the keeper. And as soon as you get a fielder behind the keeper, where are you losing him? Where are you losing that fielder from? So for me, that shot changed everything, because then I'd get more on the front foot, and I generally knew they weren't going to bowl too many balls short. So I could then try and dominate on the front foot, which is something that I'd worked on, hitting their back over their head straight. So between practicing that and working and that sort of coming into my game, my T20 and white ball cricket started to take off.
Well, that summer you scored over 500 T20 runs, a county record, and the reverse sweep particularly was a shot that we saw a lot of, and to this day still do, in all forms of the game. Is that a premeditated shot?
Yes.
Is it really? Right. There we go. No, I presume it's no secret on the circuit.
No.
But you clearly enjoy playing T20 cricket, and of course this was the sadly we didn't win the competition in 2019, but this was finals day in 2019 when we got knocked out by Essex in the semi-final. But what's it like, again, because we don't have finals at Lords anymore, this is as close as it gets really for a big day out for a county player. What was it like to play in that to be at finals day?
Again, that was a really special day to be a part of. Obviously, the emotions after the game were not quite the same as leading up into it. But the atmosphere. We obviously played the second game, and the first game had been a pretty tight affair. I think Notts threw it away, if I remember correctly. Worcester. I can't remember who was by. Was it Parnell? It might have been Parnell.
I forget. I know the dugout was basically.
Yeah.
They were just laughing at the way they were going to walk the game, and then suddenly threw it away in the final over.
I think they needed less than a run of ball for the last over, and even for the last couple, they needed two off the last 2 or 3 balls, and they obviously threw it away. So there was a lot of the atmosphere around the ground. There was a lot of excitement, and going into the game, I remember the nerves being there, and they probably put on. Essentially, probably put on a little bit. The score that they put on was too big for us. We had played well through the whole competition, knowing our game plan, and we probably didn't quite get it right. They brought Cameron Delport in, I think, as their overseas player, and he got them off to a flying start, which pretty much hurts us. If we'd just been able to contain a little bit better at the start of the innings, I think we would have held them to a manageable total, but they got off to a flyer, and we pulled things back later on. But it was just a bit too much, having then lost a few early wickets. But what a day it was! As you say, like it's not quite your Lord's finals, which I've thankfully been able to experience with in the 100. But likewise, that atmosphere there it's electric, and it was obviously disappointing not to make the final.
Derbyshire clearly started to find, without winning it in 2017, there was a quarter-final 2019, quarter-final and finals day 2022, and obviously overseas players coming in, some big names we talked earlier about, Martin Guptill and Chris Rogers, but we had Lockie Ferguson, Wahab Riaz, Imran Tahir, these kind of players. Who were the ones that stood out for you in this sort of latter perhaps the last 7 or 8 years?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question because we've had some really, really outstanding players. I think, as you say, our white ball cricket over this period in particular, we started to find as a team, when Righty came in as coach, we started to find a method, and that method, in terms of how we would squeeze teams in the middle, we get off to decent start with a bat, we'd play well up front, and then my role was to try and bat through the middle, and we'd have guys who could finish at the end. With the ball, we did a really, really good job. The Yozzers, the Critches, and then with the overseas players, some of the guys you've mentioned, like MET, when he was around, Ravi did an unbelievable job for us for years. I think as a white ball bowler, Ravi's certainly for us, and also what he added in the dressing room. What a top bloke Ravi always was to have around. Quite quiet in nature, but when he spoke, you listened. He was that type of a character, and with the white ball, with a new ball, could swing it and then tail at the death. And in this year in particular, what he did for us, he essentially got us through to finals day in what he did with the ball.
Fielding's obviously a big part of all the game, but certainly in the short form. You've not been found wanting over the years because you've been able to maintain your fitness and everything else. But when we look at Wayne's career, we talked about runs and centuries, but I think 9 or 10 times you've taken the most catches in a season for Derbyshire, which is a county record. But what do you attribute that to, that consistency as a catcher as much as anything?
Practice.
Easy to say, Wayne. Easy to say.
No. Certainly experience of dropping a lot as well. I think I dropped a lot of balls in the start of my career, and then you just get accustomed to the more the mental state that you've got to be in red ball cricket, because you stand at slip for long periods of time, sort of waiting for that nick to come, and then when it does, if you're slightly off it, it goes down. So being able to switch on and switch off, and almost like batting, how you switch on and switch off in batting. So that when I'm standing in the slips, and I've always felt in white ball crickets, my hockey's definitely helped. So the athleticism from hockey, the movement from hockey, across sports, and always playing all sports. I reckon that has a big impact on certainly me personally as a fielder and a cricketer. Being able to go across sports definitely athletically has helped with the fielding.
We talked about your obduracy as an opening batsman when you first came to Derbyshire. We'll take the right-hand picture first. Did you ever think you'd score a 47-ball 100 and it would be the fastest in Derbyshire's history? I've got a photograph at home of Wes Durston walking off after he'd scored the 51-ball 100 at Trent Bridge, and you're standing in the dugout sort of clapping him quite meekly as a young lad almost. Did you ever think that this was likely to happen?
Never.
What do you recall of the innings? Because I should point out to our audience, we needed the same amount of runs to win the game as you needed to reach 100 at one point. So in other words, to win the game, you basically got to score all the runs. Are you aware out in the middle? Because I don't think we'd got the new scoreboard up there. Or had we?
No, I think. Well, I was aware. I think
you knew. When was the new scoreboard?
I think it was up.
22 was the new board, so you would have known how many balls you'd faced.
I did know. I was aware. I think was it Yozza who was batting with me?
Yes.
Yeah, Yozza was batting. So I mean, Yozza's a very nousy cricketer. He knew what his role was. He came out there and he said, "We've got this one." And who was it? It was Andrew Ty actually. And I remember the over from him, thinking he has to go short at me. Where am I going to hit him? Because he's got all his men back. And I looked over point, and I was like, oh, there's a gap between sort of your third man and the man at cover. And I think I hit him with almost a straight bat over points to be able to get a 3, because I didn't want to risk going that side, knowing that I needed to get down the other end for the next over. But I was aware of it. But again, to go back to your question, Griffin, there's no ways. If you had said to me watching Wes's 100 at Trent Bridge in 2011, you'd bet at that. The cricketer I was then, I would have thought there's not a chance I'm going to be scoring a quicker 100 than that. So yeah, to be able to go out and achieve it, yeah, pretty special.
The amazing thing is there are about 4,000 people here, and you could hear your roar, even down on the boundary. I included that picture because you've actually still got your pads on and everything. You've walked off, and the first thing you've done is gone to your family. And you mentioned Kyla earlier on. I remember at Cheltenham, that first game, I had no idea what you looked like. And I saw Kyla sit in the stand and turned to Paul, my friend, and said, she's got to be the wife. She looks too nice to be sitting just... We'll go and ask her. We went up and said, are you anything to do with He's my husband? And that was the way we found out who you were. But presumably that's the kind of... They must give you a great antidote, I guess, as well as being supportive of you as a cricketer, a great antidote, because I suppose they're not that bothered if you're out for a dub. No. They want Dad home. No,
but I can tell you that innings, Zara was wanting me to get out, because if I got out, they were getting an ice cream. So she was wishing me to get out. But no, I mean that pretty much says it all. I mean that right there is my driver, and it has been for a long time. As I mentioned earlier with Kyla and us doing everything together. The kids now they are what drive me, and certainly we were talking about it the other day, and I said to the girls in the car, and I specifically asked Tanner. I said to Tanner, Tanner, how many more years do you want Daddy to play for? And she looked at me and she's like, at least 3, Daddy. I said, well, let's hope this body gets through 3, but we'll give it a go.
Well, the final image, it comes from the last time you walked off the cricket field, which was at Leicester in a very, very cold September.
Look a lot older than that first one.
Yeah. But your fighting weight, I don't think's changed much.
Not much.
Oh, yeah. But you scored another 100, you're 46th, you passed 1,000 runs during that innings. So what is the driver? I mean, you talk about your family, but I remember Eddie Barlow talked about it's easy to be mediocre. It's easy to be mediocre, but being good at something requires much more work. And being good at something consistently requires a lot more work. So what is it that's taken you from 2009, a century on your debut, to 2024, a century in your most recent and last game for Derbyshire? What is it that keeps that ambition going, the fitness, the consistency?
I think it sort of evolves all the time. It evolves. Where it started off as coming over here and wanting to play county cricket at first, and then realizing that actually I belong and I can achieve, and going from there and then to the previous picture, and for the last since pretty much since Tanner was born, since 2016, initially wanting the kids to be able to see me watch me play cricket, and now again for them to see what I can do, and to also set an example to them, not just as how I go about it on the field, but they get to see what I do off the field to be able to do that on the field. And I think if I can do that, not just for our kids, but the next generation coming through. I know Ethan's a young boy sitting here, but certainly for the next generation, because I used to be that little kid on the side of the field, and that for me was such a motivation, standing on the side of the field watching my heroes growing up. So for me to be able to give them the joy and give them something to be able to work to is another thing that really is a driver, because those kids on the side of the field are going to be the game for the next 20, 30 years. So it's important that it's done in the right way, and I like to think that I'm trying to drive that, and certainly for the young kids and my kids around Derbyshire be able to do that.
I think most of well, I'd be astonished if anyone in this room didn't agree with your children that they'd like another 3 years. But presumably, there will always, as with any career, there will be a point where it's time to hang up the boots or the bat. Before we look at your post-Derbyshire plans, can you just perhaps tell us a little bit about how you got to eventually play international cricket and why it mattered to you? Because, of course, you played for Italy in 50 over and 20 over cricket.
I think I nearly played for Italy in 2012, and to go back, my grand's Italian, so my dad's mum, and she passed away when my dad was young, so I never got to meet her. But I think having that Italian heritage and knowing that well, obviously having an understanding of what my gran meant to my dad, I think that for me was pretty big in terms of driving me towards it. I tried to play in 2012. It didn't work out because of the captaincy here, actually. So I was meant to go to the World Cup qualifiers in 2012 in the UAE. And then with me taking over the captaincy, we were going on a pre-season tour, and Crick understandably wanted me on the pre-season tour for us to be able to achieve what we did in that year. So that kind of went on the back. I don't think they were obviously too happy with me pulling out fairly last minute. And that kind of went on the back burners. And then Gareth Berg is the current player coach at Italy at the moment. And I played a lot against Bergie when he was at Middlesex, Hampshire, and then Northants. And we were having a conversation a few years ago at Northants. And he said, I really want to get the Italian team sort of up the rankings and try and qualify for a World Cup. So then we spoke a couple of years ago, and then we got the ball rolling about the qualifiers last year. And I'd love to play at a World Cup, and whether it's with England, South Africa, and Italy. In this instance, there was an opportunity to potentially go to a World Cup. So that we had the qualifiers in Edinburgh last year, and thankfully, and the club and Mickey allowed me to go up and play. Missed the 4-day game to go up and play, and we narrowly missed out. It was actually the game I didn't play. That was the game that cost us. We lost by 7 runs to Ireland, and if we were chasing, we sort of collapsed a little bit at the back end of the game. But if we'd beaten Ireland, we would have gone to the World Cup, and they wouldn't have. So we were really, really close. And there's a bit more sort of stuff on the horizon potentially with the Italy team as well. So they've just played pretty well in Uganda now. I was meant to be there. I've been recovering from a little bit of a shoulder niggle, so decided to, well, obviously wasn't able to go out there. But there's a bit more Italy cricket in the future, which I'll be involved with.
Hopefully we're going to see some more of Wayne Madsen in a Derbyshire shirt for at least those 3 years. You heard it here first tonight, ladies and gentlemen, from the Madsen children. But post-cricket, I mean, are we looking at the future head of cricket at a school? Are we looking at a future international batting coach? Are we looking at a head of cricket at Derbyshire? What do you see? I know you've worked on your coaching badges. What do you see your post-county player career being?
It's a good question, Griff. I think, yeah, I want to stay in the game. That for me is number one. And as you say, I've done my coaching badges to sort of prepare for that. And I'm currently doing a master's. I've got an assignment due in a couple of days, so I'm not in a rush to get out here. Don't worry, it's pretty much done. I do cut out a few words, but I'm doing a master's in leadership and sport through Loughborough University at the moment. And that sort of opens up the director of cricket type roles or director of sport type roles that you mentioned. I think over the next couple of years we'll have a look. I'm fairly, I would say I'm fairly open to different roles. I also assess, certainly from a batting coach perspective, where my body's at, because I've obviously spent a lot of time out in the field, and as a batting coach, it's quite a physically demanding role nowadays. You've got to throw and throw and throw and throw thousands of balls. And whether I've got that in me, I'm not sure. I've already had a shoulder up on the right side, so
Surely you can do it left-handed, can't you? You can do everything else.
it's the left shoulder that's dodgy at the moment. 'Cause the right shoulder is good. No, yeah. So we'll see down the line in terms of how that all progresses. What we as a family do want to do is spend a little bit more time in South Africa over the next few years. My parents are getting older, and we feel we owe it to them to spend a little bit of time. So how that's going to look, we're not too sure yet. And don't worry, I'm going to be playing for Derbyshire for a little bit longer, so we're not just running off to South Africa. But it will mean we're going to try and spend a little bit more time out there. And so the kids get to spend time with their grandparents. We get to spend time with our parents, which we've not done for the last 18 years. Carla's folks came over for an 18-month period a few years ago, but we really have missed being able to spend that family time. Yeah, we feel we owe it to the family to go back for a few years before I start whatever it is next in terms of career, which we both see as being over here.
I think we all know that the quality of the cricketer that Wayne is. I think the fact that he is unfailingly polite. I watch him when he comes off the pitch and other players run up the steps to sign an autograph, and Wayne, I see him all the time betwixt between, because he feels I should do it before I go and get into the dressing room. They're only tiny little things, but I think we've seen tonight an hour or so of Wayne's humility, his humour, and just a little bit under the surface about what Wayne Madsen is. So if we could, please, in the time-honoured fashion, show our appreciation for our living legend, Wayne Madsen.